Hi, I'm Miss Haley with the Huntsville Madison County Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to paint a flamingo using acrylic paints. That is our craft for the day. Our flamingo, and here's our example painting, is an American flamingo. So it's the variety, the species of flamingo that is common in the Americas. So you'll see them in tropical areas like the Caribbean, and there are all different kinds of flamingos, different species. So some of them are much paler than the American. The American has very vibrant colors, which is why I picked it for this craft. This is what our flamingo is going to turn out like. I painted this, though, to be honest, a very long time ago. And I think I've probably improved enough that I can make it a little bit better. So we'll see. It may not be an exact match today. But this is our flamingo inspiration. I'm going to set him over there. And for this craft, you are going to need a lot of paint. I'll be very honest. You're going to need, first of all, a water cup. I have a plastic cup that I use because plastic is bad for the environment. And so I like to reuse it as much as possible. You can see I've already been doing a little bit of painting today. You're going to need some paint brushes. You're going to need a flat wide brush. This is about 1 inch wide. I like to use this brush for filling in backgrounds in large spaces. You're going to need just a sort of regular size paintbrush. This is probably the most basic size. I actually don't know what the size is. It's so basic. You can find it in almost every kit that you get. There's a little 8 on it, if that gives you any ideas. And then you might want you definitely want a detail brush. So a very small bristled brush that can get you a fine point for some of the details, specifically with the eye on the flamingo and maybe a little bit with the beak. But you'll want that as well. Whoops. Oh, wow. I put it in upside down now. You are also going to need some paper towels to dry your brush off between colors, a pair of scissors to cut out your template, a pencil to trace your template. You're going to need your template, so print that off. I like to use cardstock, but you could totally just use paper. It's fine. This template is available on our website if you go to go.hmcpl.org, so that's go.hmcpl.org/letspaint. This is number 4. This is page 4 on my template there. And this is our flamingo template. You're going to need a paper plate for your palette. And I've already gone ahead and divvied up my paints. As you guys can see here, we're going to go through those real quick. You're going to need some white paint. And these are apple barrel acrylics. You can find them at Walmart for like 50 cents a bottle. Probably not that big bottle, but the little bottles are about 50 cents a bottle, maybe a little bit more. And you can get them through their grocery pickup. You're going to need some black, a tiny, itty bitty little dot of yellow, like the tiniest dot you can get. It was much smaller when I first put it on there. It has spread a little bit. It's been sitting. Some pumpkin orange, but really any orange will work. And we're actually mixing the two of these together for the eye. So if you find a yellow orange paint, that would probably be ideal. Then you wouldn't even have to bother with mixing it. But yeah, so we're going for a yellow orange for that eye, and that's why you need such a small amount of it. That's literally the only place we're using that. Then for our background color, we're using Key West, which is probably my favorite paint color. You guys see that one a lot in my videos. So this is Key West, and then also you're going to need a little bit of kiwi, and this is just like a really yellow green. And that's that right there. And that is going to be just kind of brushed into the background and blended in a little bit in places, just to give it a slightly more tropical feel and less solid color in the background. Then for our flamingo, I'm afraid we are doing some color mixing today. When I painted this, I painted it at home and I had different paints. So I honestly do not know what colors I used for this flamingo. So I spent a long time color mixing this morning, which is why my paint cup's already been used, trying to figure out what colors I can mix to get close to that. And I wanted to show you guys kind of the process there. So we're going to hope that I've gotten somewhat close here. And For the back of the penguin, wow, that is not a penguin. This is opposite of a penguin. For the back of the flamingo, hope I haven't called it penguin too much, you guys. For the back of the flamingo, you're going to need some cameo pink, just a big splotch of it, and then about half as much tropic orange. Probably not even, maybe like a third as much tropic orange, which is what I've got right here. I have not mixed it yet. And then for the rest of your flamingo, for his neck, the feathers are just this color kind of brushed through a little bit. But for his neck, you are going to be using honeysuckle pink, red apple, 50-50 of each, and then a dash of tropic orange. And you just kind of have to eyeball it. You don't want it too pink. You don't want it too red. You want kind of that almost neon-y red sort of color, and which is why I'm using tropic orange in there. And you don't want it too dark. I almost think, now that I'm seeing it, this is the color I mixed originally. Now that I'm seeing it, I almost think that is still too dark. So I might go ahead and just add in a smidgen more tropic orange. And so that's about half as much tropic orange as I have of these two. And I might tweak that too as I go. So we'll see about that. I'll keep that one nearby. And that's our paint palette for today. Then you will also need an 8x10 canvas panel. My original is a lot bigger than that. Again, painted that a long time ago. I have since redone it and made a template for it. I freehanded that, so yeah. So when you're doing your template, you're going to line it up in the right-hand corner. You could do it on the left-hand corner too. You could flip it over if you, just whichever way you want your, there I go again. He is not a penguin. Your flamingo to face. Got like a block on that today, you guys. So line him up in the corner, and you're going to very lightly trace him. You don't want to go super heavy. I know I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about tracing templates on here, because those pencil marks can be very dark. They can show up through paint, and you don't want to have to do 100 coats just to cover up your pencil marks. So go very, very light, dark enough that you can see it, but light enough that you're going to not have a really hard time covering it up. We're just going to go around. I'm a little shaky today. My hands are not as steady. I always keep a finger point, touch point on my template. Wow, that is a horrible tracing job. Good thing paint covers things up. I always keep a finger on my template as I'm tracing, just to keep it from moving and to keep it in position. So as I adjust around, I put a finger down, I put another finger down as I'm moving around on my flamingo here, just so I know he's not going to move on me. I know a lot of people who trace templates and struggle with that. I see it in my classes a lot when we're actually having classes at the library. Sad day, I miss you guys. So yeah, just put a finger down, trace a little bit, move, adjust, but always have something pressing it down. That way you're not going to move it around. But he's all traced, and we can set our template aside now. We are going to start painting with our background, but first we are going to draw in one tiny little detail, and that tiny little detail is his sort of face mask here, the white around his face. We're going to want to get that in there. So his eye's going to be about here. So it's just this little loop. It comes up into his face, and then it comes down, and it actually comes down into the beak a little bit. So if you can see, hopefully I haven't traced it so light, but so it comes up into his head a little bit around the eye. The eye is going to be right there. I'm not going to draw that in. And then down to here. Well, I could draw the eye in. It doesn't matter if I paint over it white. We'll see through it, and we can get the rest of it. Normally I don't paint eyes in just because you're going to paint right over it with whatever the background color is, but since it's white, we'll try it. Then his beak is going to come up a little bit, but I'm just going to draw a very rough line of where his beak's going to be. It's super rough. I'm them this way. Fortunately, I'm doing the Beak in black, so it won't matter. And we'll drag it up that way. I did not draw the full line in because obviously that's not going to matter. I just gave a suggestion and then the beak tip. You could probably freehand the beak tip if you don't want to trace that in. So we are going to get started, and we're going to start, like I said, with our background. So that means I'm going to get my big brush here. I'm going to move that guy. I always like to keep my brushes to one side. I usually keep them to my left because I'm most likely to be grabbing from this direction and pulling this way. You just want to make sure it's in a trajectory where you're not going to drip all over your painting. If it's over here, I'm much more likely to bring it down and drip all over my painting, and you don't want to really get water splotches on your painting. Always keep your brushes in water when you're not using them, and then dry them off really good between, they don't have to be fully dry, they're going to be damp, but you just want them damp. You don't want them soaking. So in the library, if you guys hear that in the background, we're really busy today, you guys. So we are going to start with the background, and I'm going to just go in with the Key West, which I may need more of that, I don't know. And we're just going to start on our background. I am going to go in here first. I like to get a little far away and then scooch up towards the line. If you go over a little bit, it's okay, because you can clean that up later when you go in with your darker color. I'm not sure Key West was my original color, you guys. I'm looking at that, and this looks a little darker. So if you wanted to really match this background, maybe mix in a little white with your Key West, but I think I like this, and it will be fine. I might streak some white in there, though. We'll see. We're just going to play a little bit today. So again, I sit my brush here, I scooch it down, and then I bring it to there, except I'm going to use my left hand for that because I'm moving leftward. So scooch it down and drag it along that line until I can't anymore because it's too narrow. And I'm going to get my background pretty wet. I don't want, I want to be able to blend it. So I'm working pretty fast right here because I'm going to be adding in more color that I can blend. Just getting right up on the lines here. I like to start in the narrow places sometimes just so that I get that part over with. That's the tedious part, isn't it? So again, set the brush down, scooch it very slowly up to the line, and then drag it over. That is just my technique. You can do what works best for you guys, but I find that helps me keep a nice, clean, steady line. I'm going to brush a little. I've got some clumping right there. And I always like to do my outline first. Just like I like to do my small places first. It helps to delineate that, and then when you're going in with the rest of the background, you don't have to worry so much about accidentally getting over those lines. It's not as much of a stress. This little guy right here. I am going to paint my edges today. I don't always. It just kind of depends on my mood. I think I might want to actually display this guy, and so I'm going to paint my edges. I don't usually frame these or anything, unless I just really love something. So, yeah. I feel like canvas panels are kind of hard to frame. Or maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just bad at framing. Good at painting, bad at framing. You should be good at both. So we're going to just go in with some background. You can tell I'm being much less careful and particular about this. I'm just getting that paint on there. And then when we we come up to the beak over here, I'm going to be careful again. So again, I'm going to set down. Ooh, I've got a clump. Let me brush that out a little. Come up to the beak, bring it down a little bit. Just keep working my way around. I get really quiet when I'm doing the edges, don't I? I'm very focused. So just going to come around. It's an awkward angle. I don't want to drag my left hand through the paint, but this is not much better. Alright, so my outline's pretty much done. I'm going to go in now on the background a little bit more. Again, getting my edges today. Really coming in with some paint, and I'm doing it a little more thickly than I probably normally would, except around the edges, just because we want to be able to paint our flamingo, and if my edges are really, really wet still, I could accidentally drag that color into my flamingo, and I do not want to do that today. But that said, I want enough in the background that I'm going to be able to easily blend this. A lot of times when I'm blending, I go in with multiple colors at once. I just kind of plop them all over the canvas, and whatever happens, happens. I'm going to do a little bit more in here because it's dried. But today I went in with one solid color, and so I'm making sure to get plenty of color on here so it'll stay wet so that I can blend. So I am now going to rinse my brush. Dry it off really good, and I'm going to come in with some of this kiwi in a few places, and I'm just going to dab that around. And wow, that almost looks yellow up against this Key West. Just dabbing it wherever I feel like, and I'm going to dry my brush off again, not really rinsing it, but drying it so that I can blend that out with the Key West that's in the background. And I'm going to get a little more Key West on my brush. There's a hard edge there of that lime. We're just going to blend. And I kind of do want it to be a little streaky, so I'm just kind of keeping that in mind. Ooh, that is way more right there than I want. I'm going to lift that off. I'm just taking my brush and literally scooping it off the canvas there. That is way more than I wanted in that area. And I'm going to go back over that probably with a little Key West to combat that as well. Alright. That is a much darker color than I was expecting it to be. So now we are going to go again back in with some Key West. And we're just kind of doing this back and forth motion, just to kind of get that a little more blended and a little less vibrantly neon. Oops, I forgot about you. I might like my other technique better. This is pretty obvious. I'm going to get a little bit over my flamingo here, just because I want that blended up to the edge. I don't want any weird outlines happening. And that is okay. It's so light that I will be able to cover that up with my paint, which is why I'm not super worried about that. Not bad. It's a little more green than I wanted it to be. So I'm going to go in with a little bit more Key West. And because that's a darker background color than I wanted it to be, we're going to go in with a little white as well. This is actually antique white. I just don't want to open my big one. And we're going to mix that on my paint palette. get a slightly paler color that we are going to go in with. Get not so clumpy on my brush here. Kind of around the edges. And we'll go back in a little bit deeper if I want. Just lightening it up a little bit. Painting is very much not an exact science, you guys. Again, kind of a back and forth brush stroke. Oh, I like that much better. And again, I'm going very lightly. If I am going over the Flamingo, that's deliberate. But I'm doing it very lightly so that it will be easy to cover up with this other, especially here, because that is going to, I'm going to even wipe that a little bit, because that is going to be a pale pink color. So just keep that in mind. That's a little dry. Dry brush that a little. Here. So yeah, technique-wise, I tried a different technique today on my background. I do think I like it better when I do splotches of color and then just blend them all together rather than going in with one and then another and then another. But it turned out okay. And that's kind of how art is playing with it and making mistakes and then turning those mistakes into something you like. There we go. So again, that was just a little darker than I wanted my background and a little more green than I wanted it. So what I did was I went in with a little bit of Key West and I mixed antique white, but regular white would work just as well. To get a slightly paler color, I went in 50-50 on those and then just did that over the whole canvas to lighten it up a little bit and blend those colors a little more. And I am pretty happy with him. We are going to go in with a clean paper towel real quick and just wipe at this section here. It's pretty dry. But I want that really dry and pale because that part is going to be a paler pink. And I want him, I don't want to have to do a bazillion colors. Okay. Just clean those edges up a little bit. Now we are going to do, what am I going to do next? I think I'm going to do, see which area is the driest. What I'm looking for is dryness around the edge so that I don't accidentally pull any of this color in, especially since I went straight over the edges in some places. I think we're going to go in with the white on the beak. I don't see any reason why I can't go in with the white on the beak yet. So we're going to do white on the beak. I'm going to take my smaller brush, get it really dry, and I'm going to come in here with white. Obviously, since I painted over my lines, I have to come in with white, but I would want to go in with white over this no matter what, because if you don't paint white over your canvas, even though the background is white, you can tell there's a distinct contrast between the painted surface and the plain canvas surface. So I always paint white where I want white, even though my background is technically white. It's kind of off-white, actually. And this is more of a true white. So that's another reason that I do always paint my backgrounds white. I am being careful on the edge, just in case it's still a little damp. I don't want to accidentally pull any in. So I'm going in with paint, and then I'm going and getting more paint and checking my brush to make sure there's not any green or whatever background color you happen to be using on my brush. Again, I'm kind of painting over the lines. Doesn't super matter. I can see them through the white, and I will tidy that up with the pink and the black later. And I painted right over the eye. I don't know if you guys noticed that. It's much easier than trying to get little bitty bits around it. It'll get a much cleaner look that way. And you can still see those line marks for the eyeball. So it will not matter. I'm just going to go in with a slight more white here on the edge to cover up that green cast. We might go in, we'll let that dry, and we might go in with another coat there just to make super sure I covered over the spot where I went over the line with the green. But for right now, it's looking pretty good. So now I am going to go in onto the background, and I think actually I do want my wide brush again. It's kind of a big back on my Flamingo. He's got back. So we're going to, again, clean brush. We're going to go in with the Cameo Pink and the Tropic Orange. We're going to mix that. And when we mix it, we're going to mix it towards the center of the paint rather than outward, because that way we have more paint to use and we don't accidentally paint our palette rather than our canvas. If you wanted, this would be a really good one to leave it partially mixed like that, so you get some swirls, because flamingos are kind of, if you've looked at them up close, they are kind of swirly. They have a lot of different colors going on in their feathers. They're not usually just a solid color. So I'm going to leave mine a little partially mixed here, and we're just going to start coming in. Ooh, I like that a lot. On his back. This is a little darker probably than my original color, but I spent some time this morning kind of comparing it to pictures of American flamingos, and I do think it's a pretty good match for his back. So American flamingos have, not all of them, I guess it probably depends on the flamingo, doesn't it? They're all unique. But a lot of them have like this little neck ruff where the darker color of their neck kind of comes in over, which is what I was going for there and what we were going to be doing on this one as well. But some of them just have a completely pale pink back. So it is entirely up to you guys what you want to do there. If you want to have his back pink and then just have maybe a little blending at the neck and then do the neck, or just have it solid, that is entirely up to you. He's your flamingo. Maybe your flamingo's a she. Who knows? Mine's just a boy. He's a boy flamingo. So we're going to go in with that all over the back. I'm kind of looking, there's a lot of glare today from my lights, from my overheads, and so I'm kind of looking for any spots where there's white still showing through. There's definitely some of the green still showing through here. I'm probably going to need another coat there. Not so much down here because I can cover that with the neck color when I go in with the blending there, but I will definitely need probably a little bit more up here. But that's okay. That's fine. We're good. Go in with some streaks. So now we're actually going to go in with, I'm trying to decide if I want to wash my brush or not. I think I do. We're going to go in with our little brush. I'm going to take a little bit of white, and we're just going to streak it through. Do I need this white again? Ooh, I might. Okay, I'm going to keep some of the white untainted by pink. I'm not going to leave it like this. I'm going to blend that out. But I'm just trying to get some white on there without tainting all of my white on my palette, because I do still need that. And we're following kind of the curve of his back here, but we're just gonna blend that out a little. You don't want solid white too much. You can have a couple of solid white streaks. That would totally be in keeping with a flamingo's pattern. And this is to get him just a smidgen paler. He's pretty pink right now. And also to kind of create a feather effect. If you guys can see, it's creating a little bit of texture on my flamingo's back. And that's what I'm kind of going for. Oops, I'm going to clean that up in a sec. Went over a little bit. Let me just come in real quick. Clean that up. Just going to have a slightly bigger back right there. You could also come over it with the, I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm going to stop. knowing when to stop is pretty important. You can go overboard, you could blend it out too much, and then he's just a paler pink flamingo. Rather than having that paler white color mix in with it. So we get a little texture there. I hope you guys can see that on the camera. I don't know how well texture shows up on here. A little closer. So you really kind of want some brush strokes. You don't have to do that. But I like that texture. Flamingos' feathers, the way they lay on their back is very textural and cool looking, I think. So we are going to mix, and I'm actually going to use my small brush first. And we are going to mix together his neck color now. So that again was 50-50 honeysuckle pink and red apple, and then some tropic orange, about a third as much of either of those tropic orange in there. And we're going to mix that really, really good. It has spread out on my palette a little more than I would have liked, but you know, what can you do? Normally when I paint, sometimes I start with all of my paints on my palette and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I add them as I need them. That way it keeps them from spreading out as much. And I want more tropic orange in here. I think I do. And that way it just doesn't spread out as much. And so you get more use out of your paint. So I'm adding a smidge more tropic orange in there. I think that is just a little too raspberry for my tastes right now. I want it more vibrant. It's not going to be an exact match to this. I really do like that color. I wish I knew what it was. But I'm doing more of a match to the pictures I saw online at this point. Maybe a little bit more tropic orange. So at this point I probably added equal parts tropic orange, honeysuckle pink, and red apple at this point, if you are going for an exact match to what I'm about to do. Maybe I need more red. I'm just so indecisive today, you guys. Okay. Now I'm pretty pleased with this color. So we are going to go in. I'm just going to get some of this off my brush. It's really clumpy. That tends to happen when you're mixing with your brush. We're just going to go in a little bit down here on his neck. Go ahead and get these lines established. Spread out some of that. And what we're about to do is blend this into his back a little bit. And I'm starting with this part because I want to do it while this is still wet. That's pretty important that you do it that way. And it's also pretty important that you don't carry this color into here. Only this color going into there. So I'm going to get right up on this edge as much as I can before I start taking it in there. So I'm just going to, ooh, I'm nervous. I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to go back in for more of my color pretty frequently, just to avoid taking too much of that lighter pink into my neck there. I may even wipe my brush off occasionally because I want the neck part to be darker. And again, we're still kind of doing that feather effect. Wiping my brush, I got a lot of the white pink on there just now. And that's okay, we want it a little bit blended. Oh, there's almost like a line. All right. Got more of a line than I wanted, so I'm actually going to come in with more of this real quick. Just over it a little bit. Just kind of layering a smidge, and then I'm going to come back in with this. There we go. I think I like that. Yeah, I think I like that. I just wanted not too much of a harsh line. There's still a little bit of it, but it's very blended there. So So if you find that you've come too far or that you have too much of a line of feathers, you can come back in. That's why we're doing these together, is so that this paint will still be wet. Just come back in with that like I did, and then adjust. You can just keep layering, honestly, and it'll go well. Just don't mix it too much. You want just strokes. You're not really like painting all over and really smushing your brush in there. So now we're going to take this up the neck. I actually think I liked the feel of this smaller brush for the neck, so we're just going to use that instead of my thicker brush. But you could use your wide brush if you wanted. I just kind of like the control this one's giving me for the lines. The lines of the neck here are pretty important. I am, of course, doing the outline of it first. I'm being very careful to create clean lines and covering up where I went over. We might need a second coat. We'll see. I don't think I need one here. I think all the layering I did there really helped with that, but I do think I'm going to need a second coat on my white. But that's to be expected. White over a dark color, any color, every color is darker than white, is just going to need more layers naturally. Okay, so his beak, his pink actually comes into the beak a smidge right here, and then it comes up his cheek. So we're going to do that a little bit right there. So I went over the white a smidge just now. Definitely going to need a second coat right there. I can already tell. I can see a lot of the green through this, but that's okay. I was expecting it. Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need a second coat, I am going to spread this out more than maybe I would. I might clump it on a smidge more. I don't really approve of clumping a ton of paint on your canvas no matter what, but I'm definitely going to spread that out so that the edges will dry so that I can do that second coat quickly rather than having to wait forever and a day for it to dry. And my beak definitely still has some white on this edge here, so I'm being very careful to check my brush to make sure I'm not accidentally getting any on there as I do that edge. I'm going to round his head out a little bit more than it was on the template. I don't know if that was the template or my bad tracing. I'm pretty sure I traced under the template, so that might have just been me. We're going to come in with our left hand here. Definitely going to need a second coat. I can really see that green through this. I think this is a little, my reds always tend to be a little thin. I don't know if that's normal for acrylics. I don't paint with a lot of red, or if that's this particular brand, but the reds tend to be, and the purples, tend to be kind of thin. Always shake your paint before you paint with it, before you get it on your palette. You get some weird oiliness sometimes. You don't do that. Alright, so there's my edge. I'm going to just smooth that out a little bit, get some of the clumpy paint smoothed out, so that I'll be able to do that second coat a little sooner. The reason you don't want to go with a second coat, you might think, oh, but it's the same color. Why can't I just go in? Paint doesn't really work that way. You need to, just wet paint on more wet paint tends to just bulk up. And to some extent that can work, but not necessarily when you're trying to cover up stuff like this. And also, wet paint over partially dry paint is especially bad because you can accidentally lift the partially dry paint and it gets sticky, it gets tacky, and then you wind up seeing through to the white of the canvas, which is the opposite of what you were trying to do. So I do try to make sure I'm going in on wet or dry paint with wet paint. Just smoothing out his neck a little bit. I just noticed that that was kind of weirdly chunky right there, and maybe weirdly thin. I'm going to make his neck a little thicker right here. There we go. That looks better. The idea is to keep his neck one size. He has sort of one size neck until it gets down to the base and it widens a little bit. Okay, so I think we're good. We're going to go in really quickly. That's super dry and clean. With a little bit more white right up here. I'm about to go in with black, so normally I would not do this, but I am well enough away from where the black is going to be that I don't think that's an issue. But if you're close enough to the black, if you're covering up where you're going to be very close to black, you will want to wait for your white to dry, or you will wind up with gray. And that's a bummer. Bummer, man. In fact, I think I am going to just go ahead and with a second coat, a very thin second coat over his whole beak. So that means I will have to wait on doing the black. I'm not going to go up to his eye though. I think his eye is okay. I added it pretty thick right there. But right here, it's pretty thin. I'm just going to do a very, very light second coat, blending it up towards the eye so there won't be any weird lines. All right, like that. So now I am going to do the eye. And decide how I want to do the eye. Do I want my big brush? I do. So a flamingo's eye, this has sort of a slit pupil in the center. It's vertical. Sort of an orangey yellow, and it has a ring of black around it. So we're going to start with the color part of the eye. We're just going to do fill the whole circle in, because black will go over this very, very easily. And I'm actually going to go in first with a yellow. We're just really going to get that on there and do a circle. And you want to leave some white around the sides. If you feel more comfortable going in with your detail brush for this, since it is such a small area, that's fine too. You don't really need to cake it on, just voila, yellow. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to get a tiny smidge of orange on my brush. I'm not even rinsing between colors because I want the same color. So the tiniest smidgen of orange there on the end. And we're just going to take that in and kind of blend it around just a little. Leaving some of the yellow showing and really getting a yellow orange. You don't want orange. Like I said, if you have yellow orange paint and you don't particularly care for the blended look or to blend on such a small area, because that's not easily done, then you can, I'm just moving it around a little bit more with a drier brush. That was kind of not as blended as I wanted it. You could just go in with some yellow orange paint. That would 100% be yellow. Fine. You could even just do yellow and be okay. So I'm going to paint his beak. Do I want to paint his beak? Do I want to paint his beak? Yeah, we're going to go in with his beak color. We're not going in with the mouth yet because that white is still drying. But we are going to go in on his beak. That. Get into the point there. Ooh, careful. You may want your detail brush for that point. Kind of depends on how pointy you can get your smaller brush. Fortunately, I'm dry right here with the white, so I'm going ahead and coming up onto this edge. I just dipped my, yeah, I did. I just dipped my hair in paint, you guys. Oh, it's a special sort of day. Calling flamingos, penguins, all sorts of fun stuff. I do think my white looks dry enough now that I'm going to go ahead and grab my detail brush and get it super dry. We're going to take his beak. Ugh, there's no place to set my hand down. We're going to take it up a little bit, kind of like that. A little more. Smooth that out. And then we're going to take and curve. That may not be perfect mouth, but the mouth he's getting. All right. And penguins actually have a little bit of pink right there on that part of their beak, if you look. But my white is super dry now. So I'm actually going to go in with, I'm still using that detail brush, by the way. I'm actually going to go in right here, kind of staying away from the black there, with more of this white. I need to clean that edge up. Look at that. I'm messing it up. Just right there. And then I'm going to go in with just a dab of the pink. It's the same pink I used on the back. And I'm going to rinse, I put a dab in there. I'm rinsing and drying my brush, and then I'm going to smear that all in. So it's going to be a very sort of soft blush to his beak. And I'm just mixing that with the white that's sitting on, that I added to it. Right on up, blend it out, taking it up to the black. Trying to be careful not to pick up. That's why I'm using the detailed brush here, because I don't want to pick up any of that black while it's still a little damp. And there we go. There's his little blush beak. Ooh, I like that. Get a little bit more right there. Rinse my brush off, and now I'm going to go in on the, I'm going to let his eye dry a little bit more. It's still pretty wet. So if you can look, you guys hopefully can see this. I can definitely see it. But all these edges here where he's darker, I almost like it because it almost creates a shadow effect, but I can definitely see those lines. So I'm going to go in again with more of my red neck color and cover that up. And I am going to be pretty liberal with my paint this time on the second coat, because I don't want a third coat, and I think we can get it if we are liberal with it. I think this is the time where we can, in fact, crusty, get it to cover by adding just a smidge more paint. And I am going over the center a little bit again. I'm doing less heavily on my paint amount in the center, but that is just going to keep me from having like a brush line where I did the second coat. If I didn't do it over the center a little bit, I would still wind up with like this weird brush line. Or I could wind up with a weird brush line along the edge, and I don't really want that. So we are doing really the whole thing on a second coat, but very much focused here on the edges. Also letting me smooth out some brush lines that were already in there and cover up some spots where there maybe is a little white showing through, like right there. It's kind of weird. There's both white and the green showing through right there. So as I come down to his neck, I am going to be very careful not to go up into that blending that I did. It's probably not fully dry. I can definitely see some wet spots, but it's to that stage where it's that tacky stage. And also I don't want to mess up my texture right there. So I'm actually going to paint kind of down in lines to avoid hitting that spot more than I need to. And there we go. So now the only thing left to do on our flamingo, I'm pretty sure, is and wow, I really like how that background color turned out. It's fully dry now, and I very much like that. We're going to go in with a detail brush, that really small brush. I almost want a smaller brush for this. I am shaping, while it's damp, I'm shaping it into like the pointiest of points that I can get. And I'm going to dip it, just barely dip the point in black and get some black on the point there. You guys can see that. And what we are going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to do a line down the center. So we'll start with going down the center. Like that. We're going to go in with a little bit more paint, get some more paint on our brush. And then just line his eye. He's got some really good eyeliner game going on, flamingos. And you don't have to be like a perfectly same line. Their eye markings are not always super even. So don't worry if yours are maybe thinner in some places and thicker in others. You just don't want to go too thick. And there is our super awesome summery flamingo. I hope you guys had fun. I'm going to let that sit there and dry for a good long time. But I hope you guys had fun. I would love to see your flamingos. You can do all different colors of flamingos. You could do purple and blue too. I've seen some like fantasy like flamingos that are pretty cool. You just use the same color method with a lighter color and then a darker color and blending. But I would love to see your flamingos. If you want to send them to my library's email address, which is Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y, Murphy, at hmcpl.org. I would super duper love to see your flamingos that you paint. And I might, they might get shared on social media. I don't know if they're cool. Just saying. You can also share stuff with us at our social media. Facebook, we are Huntsville-Madison County Public Library. We have one page for all our libraries, and we would love to hear from you. I hope you guys had fun, and I hope I get to see you again in another video soon. Thank you.